from F-Secure, and welcome David Hasselhoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mikko Hyppönen and this is David Hasselhoff!
Some people refer to me as the Hoff, and when I asked Mikko what kind of audience would be here tonight, this is what he said. A mix of hackers, journalists, artists, net activists, marketing and advertising geeks and nerds. But I love nerds. And I love geeks. Welcome!
So, we are here today to launch a manifesto. And I can't think of a better place to launch a digital freedom manifesto than Republica and Berlin. So, David, how do you like Berlin?
Well, my career started in Austria in 1987, and I came to Berlin to get a record deal from BMG, and they didn't sign me. And I flew over the wall, and it just intrigued me so much that I spent a lot of time going back and forth behind the Berlin Wall, because I realized that those people weren't free. I actually met 3 girls behind the Berlin Wall, and they said they knew me as David Hasselhoff. I said, the guy who talks to the car. And they thought I was crazy. And they said, no, you are the man who sings of freedom. So this was in July, so I took a picture with them. I said, meet me here tomorrow at 12:30. And I left East Berlin and went across the border, put the picture in the West Berlin newspaper, and then the next day I brought it back to the girls. And then the wall came down on November 9th, as you know, in 1989. Recently, I just came back for 2 reasons. One, to protest the fall of the East Side Gallery, because I think it's incredibly important that we keep the memory alive of the people who fought for freedom in East Berlin. You know, I just finished a special for the National Geographic, and I found out the most incredible stuff. There were 70,000 people in prison in East Germany, and I met guys who were in Stasi prison camps. They had no privacy, and they had no freedom, and that's what we're talking about today, is digital privacy and digital freedom. So it kind of all ties together.
And that's exactly why we are so happy to have David as our ambassador, because here's a guy who's been fighting for freedom all his life. And if somebody knows about losing your privacy, well, David Hasselhoff knows about losing his privacy. I've spent 2 days with David now, and it's incredible. Like, we walk down Berlin and cars screech to a halt, and there's everybody taking photos left and right. You have no privacy when you are someone like David Hasselhoff. And that's something that normal people on the street, people online today, they can't really experience it, but they can be worried about it. And that's something we want to address today. But before we go into that, David, what's the real story about you and the wall going down?
You know, I'm asked that question so much. I had nothing to do with the wall coming down. I mean, nothing. The only thing that I did was sing a song about freedom. And now my new song will be, I've been looking for digital freedom. You know, I found out on my last tour that when I went, I saw a lot of pictures in the audience, a sign saying, thank you for the Mauern fall. And I actually thought it was a joke. You know, I thought, well, this is a joke, but it's not. I'm now doing a special kind of about the song freedom, because freedom is one of the most important words in the world. And that song, Looking for Freedom, is known all over the world. And so my relationship with the wall really is just a song. I happened to have a song that was #1 when the wall came down, and that was it. And the kids over there said that they used it, they were little kids, you know, then they sang it like a little anthem because it had the word freedom, which I think freedom and privacy are what today's about.
And freedom and privacy is something this audience understands very well. So, David, what do you think are the 2 most important innovations of our time?
Well, it's the internet and mobile phones.
Yep. And I think that's pretty much it. The internet and the mobile phone. Yeah, there's been lots of innovations.
And then I run a car.
There you go. But the internet really changed the world. And the mobile phone, of course, changed the world as well. And we got so much good out of both of these innovations. So much communication capability, so much entertainment, so much connectivity. But now we've learned that these 2 innovations, the greatest innovations we've had, have also been turned into tools of surveillance. They've been turned back to us, people. And that's what we want to talk about. We want to get people to understand how the world has changed and how our own governments and foreign governments are using the internet and the mobile phones against us. And how do you think people feel when they learn about these things?
Well, for me, it's totally affected my life because about 6 years ago, something very private happened in my home. My daughter took a photograph of me when I was not at my best, and it went all over the world. It hit 11 million internet users probably in 3 or 4 days. Now it's probably up to 100. And I've spent a lot of my time trying to get that off the internet. And it didn't bother me as much as it bothered my daughter. And it bothered me because I broke her heart and hurt her feelings. And they accused my daughter of putting the tape out. It was hacked. It was hacked from her computer. And one of the reasons I'm here, and I talked to my daughter before I came here, and I said, you know, this is going to bring this up again, because I'm over it, and so is she. But I said, now's the time to bring this up, because it's happening to everybody now, because the surveillance now says they can get into your email, they can get into your texts, they can get into your photographs, and your contracts, your finances, just about anything. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is to talk about what we can do to stop that. And frankly, what can we do?
Well, there are different things people can do. I mean, we can talk about technical means, like how do you encrypt your email? How do you make sure you have a functional VPN? How do you make sure that your hard drive is encrypted? How do you use Tor? And of course, these all help. And we promote all of these mechanisms that people can use on their computers and on their phones. But these technical means, they don't really change the core problem. The core problem is that internet's being used to watch over our daily lives. And this is something that it was never meant to be used for. And it simply isn't right. Just because something is technically doable doesn't make it right. And the main justification for monitoring people's communications and saving our data forever is that it can be done. Data has become so cheap that, did you know that it's actually now cheaper to keep data than to delete data?
No.
It's very simple. If you want to delete data, you have to check classified. Like, what do I want to save? What can I delete? That takes manpower. It's cheaper nowadays to simply keep everything, because data is so cheap. Hard drives have become so cheap. And that's how the surveillance state can save our data forever. Practically forever. And one thing that people feel when they learn about these things, for example, when the Snowden leaks came out, and people learned about how foreign intelligence agencies are collecting mass quantities of data, how they are tapping underwater intercontinental data lines with nuclear submarines, how they are storing all this data in the largest data center on the planet. When people hear about things like these, they feel like there's nothing they could do. There's nothing they could do. They become hopeless. And they sort of give up. They sort of surrender. And that is understandable, because there's nothing that immediately comes to mind you can do about it. These technical safeguards will help, but what helps even better is political change. People saying no. People standing up and saying that this is not okay. People telling their decision makers and politicians that we didn't build the internet for this purpose. So one thing that I know you have as a cooperation with is cooperation with Google, right?
Yeah, there's so many great things about the internet. I was asked on April Fool's Day, which is a big holiday around the world, to take some photographs, and if you was Auto Awesome, which was on the Google homepage, if you hit hashtag Hoffsome, a picture of me would come back with one of your photographs, and there was 30 million. I mean, it hit 30 million people, and there was like 27 impressions on Twitter. So there's so much good about the internet, you know, that frankly, what you're telling me now is kind of scary, you know, because I think, like the theme of Knight Riders, one man can make a difference, and I think the only way we can make a difference is if we all band together and sort this out, you know, because what happened to me has happened to a lot of people, and just the other day, when I met Miko, he said, your name came up in a virus. And I said, well, I feel fine.
No, not that kind of a virus. But it's true, we actually have analyzed in our labs several years ago a virus which was referring to David Hasselhoff. It had some functions which were named David Hasselhoff. We don't know why. But of course, when you are David Hasselhoff, you get tied into all weird connections. I'm talking about Knight Rider and Kit and Google. I understood they actually, at Google's office, took you into a self-driving car.
Yeah, they're making a self-driving car at Google, and they have the Hoff Award, and the Hoff Award is an award they give to people who have perseverance and really work the hardest. And there's about, I think, over maybe 100, 130 people working on this amazing car, and they picked me up at the airport in a self-driving car, and they basically just said hit on, which is like cruise control, and I hit on, and the car drove itself.
Well, that must be very familiar to you.
Actually, it was very scary. I mean, I have anxiety just thinking about it. And then I happened to run into Sergey, and he basically said, take him out in the real car. So they took me out in the one that changes lanes and has schematic blueprints of everything. Everything that Kit was doing now, 30 years, oh my God. 30 years, I'm still alive.
Yes, you are.
Jesus. Wow, that's good though, I guess. 30 years ago, everything that Mike Sheffield built the car is coming true. And now, in maybe 2 years, they're going to be able to put in this blueprint, schematic blueprint that's going to be able to be put in any car. So, my dream is to actually put it in a Knight Rider car and drive around the world.
And maybe call the car from your watch. Which is also happening, of course, with the new watches where you can actually use it as a phone. So pretty much the technical details that you were forecasting with Knight Rider 30 years ago have become reality. But so has something else which was forecasted to happen in 1980s, which was Orwell's book, 1984. And like I've said before, in many ways Orwell was an optimist. Some of the worst things he was forecasting that would happen in a surveillance state have happened, and even worse things have happened. Because now, through the internet, not just what we communicate can be intercepted, even what we think can be intercepted. And that's especially easy to see through services like Google Search. Because when you go to Google Search or Bing Search or any search engine, you're completely honest. You type in exactly what you think. We don't lie to the internet. The internet and whoever sees what we type into search engines, including the search engine companies and of course the intelligence agencies, they will eventually end up knowing us better than our families know us. And that is a scary thought. So today, to fight these problems, we're launching a manifesto. F-Secure is a company. We build security solutions. So as a stock listed company, of course, we're trying to make a profit. But I'd like to think it goes beyond that. I've worked with this company for 23 years now, and I feel personally very strongly about the internet, about digital freedom, and about privacy. So the manifesto we're launching today, together with David, will become a way for anybody who feels strongly about these things to participate. You can join in. It's going to be a crowdsourced document which we will write together. We will create it as a wiki, and it will be finished by the end of June. And when it's finished, we will edit it, we will have it signed, and we will deliver it to the world leaders. We will deliver it to the EU Parliament, to Angela Merkel, to Barack Obama, to President Putin, to President Xi. And of course, it's not going to change anything by itself, but it is a start. So this manifesto we're launching today will be split into 4 parts. We're talking about the different problematic areas that I think everybody would agree when you start looking closer into these problems. So we will first address freedom from mass surveillance. Now, David, as an American, how do you feel about this position where USA is right now, where, because all the large services are in USA, the rest of the world naturally uses US services?
Well, I want to get into the country when I go home. You know, I feel that mass surveillance is it's kind of a double-edged sword. If we're chasing a criminal or a corrupt government or a terrorist or someone who's not cool, then I think it's all right. When it comes down to surveillance of me or them or all of us at home, I think it's absolutely wrong. I think that's a privacy that we're given when we were born. I think we're born with freedom, and I think we're born with privacy, and I think those are God-given rights. So the mass surveillance is a little scary, but if it's after corrupt governments or terrorists, of course. But when it comes to personal identity, but personal people, I think it's absolutely wrong.
And I actually agree with David. These intelligence agencies, these global intelligence agencies, their mission is to gather intelligence. But you can split it into 2 different kinds of intelligence gathering: targeted gathering and blanket gathering. And targeted gathering is the kind of intelligence gathering where they know who they're interested in. They have reason to look at somebody. And I don't really have a problem with that. I don't even have a problem with the US intelligence agencies tapping the cell phone of Angela Merkel. Yes, she must have been surprised that it was the Americans listening to her calls, but she must have understood that she, as the Chancellor of Germany, is a valid and a legitimate target for intelligence agencies worldwide. I don't have a problem with intelligence agencies listening to Angela Merkel's phone calls. I do have a problem with them listening to my mother's phone calls. So what do you think about Snowden?
Well, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, in one way, he's made us all realize what's going on in the world, and in another way, it's not a good thing because he's mentioned names, you know, and so it's a double-edged sword there. It's like I don't know, you know. I mean, I think time will tell. I know that one thing, he's made us aware of something that's very important.
And regardless of the details of the Snowden story, it's quite clear that we owe a great gratitude for Edward Snowden for his heroism with coming out of this information. There's lots of unanswered questions about the Snowden saga, but it's clear that we have woken up. We've realized just how much in control the Western intelligence agencies are over the rest of the world. And one part of the problem here really is that we, the rest of the world, the 96% of the planet, keep using services run by the 4% of the planet, the services in the United States. Why? Because they're great. You know, Google services and different websites and Amazon and Facebook and social media, all of these, almost all of them are in USA. So it's not really America's fault for running great services, but you could also argue that it's a failure for the rest of the world. It's clearly a failure for Europe. Because where are the European alternatives? Where are the European search engines? Where are the European cloud storage services or the European webmails? The fact is, there's very little internet industry of the same scale in Europe as we have in the United States. And that's very easy to figure out. David, name a large American internet company. Any company. Oh, let's not name Google, you just named it before. No? All right. So let's say Amazon or Facebook or Microsoft or Apple. It's not very hard to come up with large American companies at all. All right. So let's think about similar European companies. Companies of that size and scope. European internet companies size of Facebook or Microsoft or Apple. And it's actually very hard to come up with any examples. We have a couple of success stories from Europe. Unfortunately, they typically end up being sold to USA, which once again makes them part of the legal access to our data. So part of this problem is that Europe is failing. We've been failing for 10 years. And I have high hopes that this is going to change. Because looking around us, I've been here now in Berlin for 2 days, in 2 different events. I see smart, young people in tech startups everywhere I look. Here in Europe. And that's great. Because for so long, we haven't seen it happening. So hopefully we have new competition coming from here, from Europe. So we will always have to send our data out of EU to different legislations, which we know can be problematic. Number 2 of our manifesto, number 2 out of 4, is freedom from digital persecution. Now we already discussed how data has become cheap, so cheap that it's actually cheaper to retain than delete. And one part of the problem is that as data gets collected and stored, even if you have no problem today with today's governments, we know nothing about future governments. For example, imagine, well, you've been to the Stasi Museum, right? Stasi. Yes. So imagine if Stasi would have had the kind of access to people's lives as today's governments have. Yeah. It just boggles the mind. So future governments are completely out of our grasps, and any right we give away forever. So we're blindly trusting future governments that we know nothing about. And that's one of the reasons we don't want to have our data collected and saved forever. Not just because it can be done. The technical capability is not a good reason. And so there are people who say that, you know, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Do you have anything to hide?
Yeah. But I'm not going to tell you. Yeah. What's her name again? We all have something to hide, and if you don't have something to hide, I think you're not telling the truth. So we all have something to hide. But I mean, it can be something good as well. You know, it could be your privacy. You know, I mean, who wants to be photographed at home? You know, doing whatever you do. It's not appropriate.
Yes. It's about privacy. And whoever says they have nothing to hide simply hasn't thought about this for long enough. People who think they have nothing to hide don't respect the power of privacy. And privacy is non-negotiable. Privacy is a human right. It's even written into the International Declaration of Human Rights. We shouldn't even be discussing the need for privacy. And it doesn't change the fact that we're now communicating online. We still need our privacy. Every single human being needs it, even if you have nothing to hide. And I have nothing to hide, yet I'm not really interested in giving my data to intelligence agencies, especially to foreign intelligence agencies. Number 3 in our manifesto is freedom from digital colonization. And a colleague of mine, actually, an American colleague of mine, made this statement a couple of months ago that he thinks that the United States is treating the internet as a superpower would be treating one of its colonies. So in that sense, we're back to the golden age of colonization. And that's not really where we want to be. We want to keep the internet free. Free like it used to be. And there are means of fighting back. We discussed there are technical means. There's also political means. And political means that we should tell our decision makers that we are not okay with this. Europe and EU Parliament has to stand back. Our own governments have to limit the kind of surveillance they do. Blanket wholesale surveillance on the internet is not okay. And the last part of our manifesto is freedom of digital access, freedom of movement, and freedom of speech. And yet again, freedom of speech is something which is written to the International Declaration of Human Rights. We all have the right to speak our mind. We all have the right to say what we want to say. And this is something that, as a whole, makes up our manifesto. So we're ready to launch the manifesto today. David is our ambassador. The way we do it is that we have a website prepared, a wiki website, open for everybody, just like Wikipedia, running on the same platform as Wikipedia. It has the skeleton in there. I will be there myself, adding the way I feel about these things. I invite David to participate as well as I invite every single one of you. And although this is organized by a commercial company, by F-Secure, we're not really doing it for any other purpose except to bring awareness to it. Of course we get recognition and branding out of it. I'm not going to deny that. But we're not interested in making a penny out of this. In fact, we're going to license everything we do around this project under the Creative Commons license. David, are you aware of the Creative Commons license? No. Let me tell you what it is. Creative Commons is sort of like anti-copyright. So, for example, when you record a song or film something, you automatically have a copyright for it. And it's pretty clear when David Hasselhoff records a song, he wants to retain the copyright. But what if you're not really David Hasselhoff? What if you're just goofing around on YouTube and make something and put it online? Well, it turns out you still have the copyright, even if you don't really want it, even if you don't really need it. Even if you really want to give it away, even if you don't mind if someone else takes that content, takes that song, takes that video, takes that painting, and uses it further. If you don't act, it's automatically going to fall under copyright and you can't give it away. So Creative Commons is a way of actively giving it away, saying that I don't want these copyrights.
Right, there's, I think the last count for me was something like 250 illegal items on the internet that I have no copyright on. And I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. Can you do something about that?
Well, there's no undo button on the internet. When something has happened on the internet, it's gonna stay on the internet.
Believe me, I know.
So we're gonna put it under Creative Commons. We have the URL already on this stage, on the back of us. That's the address you can go after this keynote and start to take action yourself. Sorry? I believe it also works with HTTPS. I haven't actually checked. It should. If not, it's going to work tomorrow, and that's a promise. The question was whether we have that page encrypted or not. Well, if we don't, it will. That's a good point, a valid point. And like I said, the manifesto by itself is not going to change the world. But it's something, and it's a start. Because I believe that digital freedom is worth fighting for. David?
And that's why I'm here. I believe that digital freedom is worth fighting for. I'm just here to say you people can make a difference. So let us know what you think, and maybe we can change the laws.
And please join the fight, because digital freedom is worth fighting for. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
people, do we have any questions? Yes. Wait, no. Do we have a microphone? There we
There's
have.
a microphone coming.
Please wait for the microphone.
You were so quick in 2
I'm
hands, so you
afraid.
get it first.
Okay, my first question is for Mr. Hasselhoff. Mr. Hasselhoff, with so much security around your personal data, do you ever feel like you're never gonna die?
So much security around.
I mean, since the internet is forever, you're going to live forever.
I very rarely have security around me. I got one guy over here named Ben. But that's just a fun.
No, I meant in terms of the internet, that you're going to live forever on the internet. Does that scare you, or do you like that?
I like that.
That's awesome. Also, will you take a selfie with me, please?
I can probably go to my own funeral.
That's
That's
you probably
right.
can.
I can have my funeral online. Would you come?
Dude, yeah, I'll be there. Will you take a selfie with me afterwards?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. You have to.
Talking about digital freedom, you're talking about selfies.
All right,
I
next
love
question.
this world. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. 1295.
We have a question over here. Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Hasselhoff. Could you please sing your song?
It's not about me singing. I have no tracks. I have no tracks. Which song do you want me to sing? He told me not to sing because he wants us to be serious. But you know what it is? It really is a serious issue and it's affected me in a really negative way. But I love that you asked me to sing. No. Next time. I might be singing on. I was born a rich man's son. I had everything that money could buy, but freedom I had none. You sing it. I've been looking for freedom. I've been looking for freedom. Still the search goes on. That's digital freedom we're looking for.